With the new millennium coming right around the corner, this would coincidentally be the end of a few major timelines in track and field. On the women's side, Australia's Cathy Freeman would finally get her long-awaited and theatrical gold medal in the 400 before semi-retiring in the coming years. German long jump legend Heike Drechsler would hang on ever so slightly to her former prime years, winning her second gold medal in the event to become the first woman to win 2 Olympic golds at the age of 35 nevertheless. On the men's side, Cuban long jump crusher Ivan Pedroso would also win his long-awaited Olympic gold medal before eventually tapering as he entered his 30s. The GOAT of the triple variant, Jonathan Edwards from the UK, also got his long-awaited gold for his last games. And then there's Michael Johnson from the US, who really needs no introduction at this point, ended his one-of-a-kind career with one last gold medal in the 400, comfortably ending his career as one of the most decorated Olympians to ever live. What followed after these games, though, was a harsh drought of frankly underwhelming marks and fairly underwhelming championship events too. A few amazing performances popped up here and there throughout the years, sure, but if this wasn't shaping up to be a little bit of a doozy of a decade compared to almost any year the 90s offered, then I'm not quite sure what would be. Thankfully, with the 2004 Athens Olympics coming up in late August that year, athletics as a whole would kick into that extra gear many fans had been waiting for, and the storylines that quickly developed over the course of a few months would nicely set the stage for one of the most memorable timelines in the sport's history. Before we get to the Olympics, let's see what type of fitness athletes wanted to show off and what kind of storylines that were shaping up. Let's start with February. On the 15th of this month, the first world record of the year was broken, where Russian pole vaulter Yelena Iziembeva starts the year off with a 483 clearance. Then a few days later, a talented pack of Kenyan and Ethiopian runners gathered together at Birmingham for an indoor meet. Ethiopia's Kenenisa Bekele would set the indoor 5,000 meter world record that day, running 12:49.60 for his first 5K of the year.
Super, was noch hier rausholt, aber es wird knapp, aber schafft, läuft Weltrekord! Kenenisa Bekele, 12:49.61.
Then 2 days later, another Russian pole vaulter, Svetlana Feofenova, would take the record back in Greece, clearing it by not just 1, but 2 centimeters to claim her record back. In fact, these two went back and forth for the next few months, where just a few weeks before the Olympics, the record would be broken 7 separate times, with Iziembeva being responsible for 5 of them at the moment. Then to complete the trio, Russian triple and long jumper Tatiana Lebedeva also broke the world record at the World Indoor Championships in the triple variant. Once the outdoor season arrived, the attention quickly shifted back to Bekele, when he was scheduled to compete at the FBK Games in the Netherlands. The current world record holder, Haile Gebrselassie, would be present but was competing in the 10,000 instead. It wasn't crystal clear what the intentions of this race were at first, but a 5:05.47 for the split made it certain that this was indeed a world record attempt. The scariest part was that following the Pacers' departure, the splits only seemed to get faster and faster throughout, even slipping in a sub-60 more than halfway into the race. These eventually added up to give Bekele a nice 3-second cushion over Gebrselasie's record, with just a couple laps left. But given Gebrselassie closed his final 400 in 56.5, Bekele knew he couldn't get too comfortable with where he was at. Thankfully, his stride does open up upon the bell lap, and as he confidently comes down the home stretch, Bekele would now hold 2 senior world records to start off the year.
Is het record van Gebrselassie en dat gaat eraan. Een nieuw wereldrecord in Hengelo. Het is een feit. 12:37.37. Oi, oi, oi.
Given legends like Daniel Komen and Haile Gebrselassie brought down the record so viciously in such a short amount of time, it was almost unthinkable that someone else could enter the mix this quickly. Bekele hadn't even broken 13 minutes just 2 years before this, and now he has dethroned arguably one of the most difficult distance world records out there. It did not matter to Bekele that this was an Olympic year because just a little over a week following this time, he saw no reason to stop there and decided to go for the 10,000 meter world record as well, which was held by, you guessed it, his countryman and mentor, Gebrselassie. This time around, there was an announced $50,000 bonus should Bekele break this record, so comparatively speaking, the incentives were through the roof. Here's how that race would pan out for him.
Dabei ist er erst 21 Jahre alt. Früher hat man gesagt, mit 21, 10.000 Meter Weltmeister, 5.000 Meter Weltrekord. 21, 15, es ist nicht zu fassen, es ist nicht zu fassen. Er ist deutlich und er schafft es, er kann sogar noch spurten. Komm, 17, 18, 19, 20, durch, Weltrekord. Ich soll's nicht sagen, ich weiß, aber da wird der Hund in der berühmten Pfanne verrückt.
26-20-31. Bekele would somehow find a closing 400 even faster than the kicking legend himself, and now possessed 3 world records within just 4 months. Just like that, it was settled. The current GOAT of track and field had all 3 of his records revoked, and it seemed like a new king was wasting no time trying to take over. Another athlete who seemed to be sparing absolutely no one this year was Turkey's Elvan Bekele. While the only times she even broke 15 minutes were near the end of last year, she completely shocked the women's distance running scene with a new world record in the event, running 14:24.68. This would be the last world record going into the 2004 Olympics, but there were plenty of other great rivalries to scope out that can make the games a fantastic one. On the men's side, you had 2 of the 3 fastest men in history in the 1500 looking to duke it out. Rank number 3 Bernard Lagat from the US, and the world record holder Hicham El Guerrouj from Morocco. While the Moroccan legend didn't seem to race all too much this year, the two would meet up in Zurich just 2 weeks before the 1500-meter final. Sadly, no footage exists, but the result was an absolute nail-biter. Both of them ran 3:27, which means they were not only fiercely competitive still, but also razor sharp in the speed department as well. But it would be Lagat to take the win in the end. El Guerrouj also planned on doing the 5,000 to attempt the very unique double gold, a feat only accomplished by Paavo Nurmi back in 1924. However, he would have to worry about Kenyan prodigy Eliud Kipchoge, who as a teenager outkicked the mile GOAT at his own game last year. And lastly, Haile Gebrselassie was looking to defend his 10,000-meter Olympic title, but his protege Bekele looked completely unbeatable this year, on top of the fact that he soundly upset him at the World Championships last year too. On the women's side, the most notable rivalry was between the Russian pole vaulting duo of Iziambeva and Feofanova. They were changing the event's history just about every single month, so who knows what could happen when you pin them against each other at the most competitive stage possible. In the 5,000, Bekele was the world record holder now, but she'd have to worry about her former Ethiopian teammate, Tirunesh Dababa, the world champion from last year and likely the only person that could potentially contest Bekele if it turned out to be a fast race.
Se proclame campeón olímpico por tercera vez de los 10 kilómetros. Por lo tanto,
the men's 10,000. Traditionally a reserved race given the risk involved with taking it out fast, but this race was frankly far from that. Not only was the first 400 meters out quick, but the first 1K was fast enough that the production team needed to put up a world record split comparison because they were ahead by 3 seconds. Now, the pace does soon simmer down to some 69-second laps, and defending champion Haile Gebrselassie can be found nice and snug in the middle before changing his mind about 8 minutes in. His teammate, Seleshi Sahine, tucked in right behind, and next thing people knew, the field is striding out beyond world record pace again. But then you got Bekele taking over, and things just get completely out of whack. A 61-second lap smack dab in the middle of an Olympic 10K, and the temperatures are not exactly cool enough to warrant this aggressive of a tactic against this type of field. However, Bekele and the Ethiopian trio trudge right on, and the rest of the pack as a result has been shattered into a bunch of different pieces. Torotic even tries to poke around to see if he can take the lead for a change. But this disruption immediately offends and triggers a visceral response from the Ethiopian trio, as the following lap is a 60.61. All of a sudden, everyone but Torotic has fallen off completely. Within the next couple laps, this volatile pacing strategy has now taken a toll on the 10,000-meter legend, as Gebrselassie slowly pulls away from the lead pack and out of frame, leaving us with 3 runners with less than 3,000 meters left. At least, that's what it seemed like. Once the laps do come back to reality a bit, the lead pack nearly doubled, and Tadesse and the defending Olympic champion were all of a sudden back in the mix. It's an utter brawl to take the lead as if they're heading into the final lap, but ultimately it's Sahine with Bekele right behind that try to put forth one last jolt into this group that will shock their legs as they inch closer and closer towards the final lap. Before anyone knows it, first and second place have likely been determined. The Ethiopian duo are communicating with each other subtly, knowing they have gold and silver in the bag, but when push comes to shove, someone is going to need to win against their compatriot at the end of it all.
Haciendo un esfuerzo y lo vemos aparecer.
Ahora se va a quedar Misa Bekele.
Sí, ahora viene otro cambio y ahí Tadesse pues es una máquina.
Qué barbaridad, qué zancada. Después de 9.400 metros.
Estoy convencido que...
Infernal. Campeón olímpico. Es el primer título.
53 segundos. O sea, ha sido sensacional.
Tadesse 27-22, que es récord nacional. Kipros, mejor marca de la temporada.
Lethal is barely the word that can describe Kenenisa Bekele's kick in that final lap. He managed to put 4 seconds in front of second place within 400 meters, broke the Olympic record, and now had his first Olympic gold at the age of 22. Sahine's second place was still fantastic, and Tadesse would take home Eritrea's first ever medal at the Olympics. For Gebre Selassie, however, he would have to settle for 5th, and would soon pivot towards road racing almost full-time after this performance. Bekele still had the 5,000 to really prove himself further, but in the meantime, let's take a look at a much shorter event. The men's 100 invited back every single medalist from the 2000 Olympics. You had American gold medalist Maurice Green, Trinidadian silver medalist Otto Bolton, and the Barbados bronze holder, Obadeli Thompson. In the heats, father time seemed to affect Bolton the most, as he struggled to make it out of the first round, but the other two medalists seemed to make it out in more than good enough form. The semis were a different story though, as Thompson just barely got by to make the finals, and Green got an incredibly difficult heat draw, running 9.97 to snag only the 3rd out of 4th qualifying spot, even if by time he would have easily made it. With that said, here were your finalists. The defending Olympic champion and current USA champion, the 2000 bronze medalist, and a couple up-and-comers that felt like it was their time to shine and to pave the way for the new generation of sprinters. This is how those 10 seconds would unfold. Crawford was out great, but unfortunately tightened up with 30 to go. Green was the fastest reactor to the gun and seemed like he had made up just enough ground for his second Olympic title, but Justin Gatlin, who actually reacted the slowest to the gun, looked fantastic midway through the race, fending off the newbies and veterans, and would come through the line just in time to take his first Olympic title for his first ever international championship. Portugal's Francis Obiquelu would run a monster personal best and area record for silver, and the championship veteran himself would add medal number 8 to his already outstanding resume. Now let's see how a few other events and storylines are unfolding in the meantime.
And I'm sure Kelly was closer to 29. She's giving Maria Matola a bit too much.
Matola won't let Kelly Holmes pass. She wants to control this. Miles Clark has the lead. Kelly Holmes attacking on the outside. Come on, Kelly! One more yard. Come on, Kelly Holmes! It's gold! Kelly's won the gold for Great Britain.
Brightwell won the women's 800 meters in Tokyo, and now Kelly Holmes.
Puis ensuite un autre 200 en 32-33 comme cela au beau milieu d'un 5000 mètres, c'est pas possible.
Et ça c'est la science de Véronique Billard.
C'est bien, c'est bien.
On a l'impression que Mesret Defar lui met un peu la pression comme ça et puis voilà. Elle la détache au fur et à mesure pour finir de lui.
Tout juste, Éthiopie comme Bekele, Defar médaille d'or, Isabella Oshishi médaille d'argent et la championne du monde de Paris.
Before we hop back into some of the women's storylines, let's briefly pivot towards one more event on the men's side, and that was the 1500. As we said before, Legat and El Guerrouj were the big favorites. El Guerrouj was the primary one, but he had yet to secure a 1500-meter Olympic gold medal, despite having 3 world championship titles and a world record. The race is fast off the line, but soon simmers into a fairly conservative 60-second lap. El Guerrouj realizes that he's had enough and starts to position himself to begin his surge with 600 to 700 left, and Legat unsurprisingly latches right on. The Moroccan was going to try once again to win this from the front, but as Legat refused to let go of El Guerrouj, and given what happened in Zurich, he was put in yet another spot where his third and likely final Olympics would ultimately be put in gold medal jeopardy.
But El Guerrouj found something in reserve and just nipped him.
A tragic fall in 1996, a risky pacing operation in 2000, but for 2004, any and everything would finally click, resulting in El Guerrouj reveling in the prestige that was his first Olympic title. And the emotions could not be more palpable once he processed what he had finally accomplished. His most sought-after title in his grasp now gave him a new sense of clarity and momentum that El Guerrouj had honestly never possessed. And now that it was a few days away from the 5,000, he would have to go up against a Kipchoge with fresh legs and a prime Bekele hot off of a 10,000 meter win, and both of these men were not going to let even the slightest of errors slide for the newly crowned champion.
Yes, you've won the gold medal. Kelly Holmes is the Olympic champion. So can Kelly Holmes do it again? The women's 1500 meter final gets underway.
Right, let's not forget what was going on for women's middle distance. In the 800, Great Britain's Kelly Holmes performed one of the most theatrical wins in the event ever, going from dead last to first in the second half. At the age of 34 nevertheless. She was lined up for the 1500, which on its own was quite unorthodox. The 8:15 double gold has been done a couple times before, but is still proven to be one of the more difficult ones in track and field due to how physically demanding it is compared to other doubles, like the 5K 10K one or the 100-200 one. However, Russia did seem to be the favorite to win the 1500, as 2 out of the 3 women were former world champions, one of which won a title as recently as last year. However, the one with the least amount of accolades sets the tone with a more than honest first quarter. Holmes, however, just sits in the back like her 800 race, not letting the aggression interrupt her game plan. The pace slows to a 65, and Holmes looks reasonably comfortable with around 600 to go. If anything, this situation was perfect. Not only had the race slipped into a more comfortable tempo, but Holmes knew she had the fastest kick and personal best out of anyone in this race. The forbidden double gold was less than a single lap away, and instead of letting it come down to a nail-biter, the Brit would make sure no one would spoil her once-in-a-lifetime moment and would try to turn this dream into a reality.
Historic second goal. Kelly Holmes for Great Britain wins the 1500 meter title.
Running her fastest time in 7 years, in fact, her first sub-4 in 7 years, Kelly Holmes was a double Olympic champion, and for Holmes to execute this at again 34 years old quite literally makes these wins individually absurd on their own, let alone doing both at the same games. The final day of the track was off to a generational start, but the crowd couldn't get too content just yet, because 30 minutes later, another legend was looking for a historic double of his own, and the company he had would also be no joke either.
He was towing the line right there. And Bekele won the 10,000, a matchup of 2 gold medal winners here at 5,000 meters.
Here we are at the men's 5,000 meter final. 2 athletes in this race already had a gold medal going in, which was Kenenisa Bekele in the 10,000 a week back, and Isham El Guerrouj in the 1500 from 4 days ago. And they're also the world record holders in these events. The 5,000 is traditionally much better suited for 10,000 runners, especially given Bekele is the world record holder in that event as well, But in this unique case, the 5,000 actually might be the great equalizer. But of course, you cannot forget the defending world champion, Eliud Kipchoge, who beat El Guerrouj last year with a lethal final 200 of his own. Compared to the 10K, it's a much tamer start from the gun. 74 seconds for the first recorded 400-meter split, 71 seconds for the other. These guys are barely on sub-15 pace. However, the broadcast cuts away for a few minutes, and all of a sudden the broadcast is greeted with a drastically different race altogether. A thinned out line of elite runners churning their legs much faster than usual, and it actually turns out it's Bekele who wants to try and take the legs out of everyone, running 60.9 seconds for one of the laps. Kipchoge does try to fight Bekele a couple times for the lead, and unlike the 10K, Bekele does give this up to the Kenyan prodigy, controlling the pack down to a more honest tempo of 63-second laps. As the bell lap approaches and we look at this position with 400 to go, El Guerrouj's position looks, frankly, pretty bad. He's boxed in by virtually everyone. Bekele has the shoulder on Kipchoge, who's leading the race comfortably, and we're at the point where a significant enough surge could force El Guerrouj to swing incredibly wide, and ultimately just putting him at a massive disadvantage during the most pivotal point of this race. Kipchoge needed to fend the rest off, Bekele needed to make his signature move sometime soon, but El Guerrouj, he might just need an outright miracle.
And here comes El Guerrouj after him. Can he get him? Bekele, gold medalist at 10,000 meters. Fight together, sprinting at the end of 5,000. And El Guerrouj pulls away to win.
I'm the first time that I am the number one. I'm very happy after Nurmi in 24. Today I win 2 gold medals. It's fantastic.
Within 30 minutes apart from each other, another double Olympic champion was crowned. Hicham El Guerrouj made it clear that he was the best middle distance runner to ever live, and this win could not make it more abundantly clear. 1924 was the year where Paavo Nurmi pulled off this historical feat, but to perform it against the world record holder and the defending world champion was truly in a league of its own. This was the race where El Guerrouj felt like he had done it all. He got the Olympic title he wanted, managed to do it again in a discipline he seldom raced, and would officially retire knowing his efforts were worth it all, resting his legs, mind, and body as the sole GOAT of middle distance. And with that, the relays afterwards would wrap up the 2004 Athens Olympics. But it'd be remiss to not take a look at least one more race before we officially wrap things up.
Dan Brown, as they are off, a much anticipated start by these athletes, many of whom...
Anticipation-wise, there wasn't really a clear favorite going into the men's marathon. Only the silver medalist from the 2000 Olympics would return, but you did have last year's champion from the slightly less but still competitive World Championships. You also had Kenya's Paul Tergat, who had run a blistering sub-205 marathon this year. It was honestly anyone's game, especially when the temperatures were nearly 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Not quite as death-defying as the women's marathon, but a more than stifling one nevertheless. Naturally, no one took the lead early into the race, but Morocco's Khalid El Boumili took a different approach, let's say. Spoilers, he dropped out halfway into the race. Once the marathon actually starts to unfold at around 10K, the new head honcho of the pack would be Brazil's Vanderlei Gelima, but a couple others would hover around, switching spots, just kind of feeling the mood out amidst these brutal conditions. A bit before halfway, South Africa's Hendrik Ramola becomes the definitive leader for the first time, managing to get a colossal 22-second lead within a short time frame. It's not longer though until the unforgiving incline section of this race puts Ramola in rough spirits, as the chase pack has caught him shortly, and we're right back to where we started. Soon enough though, it's Gelima who tries to make another move just before the water station, getting whatever hydration he can in before putting his own surge on the rest of the field during what seems to be a reasonably steep part of the race. By about 3/4 in, Gelima now has the largest lead seen in the race by far, a 40-second deficit that anyone fighting for the gold needs to make up. 15 more minutes go by, and virtually nothing changes. A Brazilian win for track and field was imminent. Gelima looked focused and only had about 7K before his Olympic dream came true. But just moments after this pivotal point of the race, catastrophe would strike almost immediately after.
Vem alguém pra cima. É um absurdo.
Idiota, né?
É um absurdo.
Out of seemingly nowhere, Julima was grabbed and pushed by a random stranger into the crowd, but eventually managed to escape the scuffle he was in and continued the race in first. Sadly though, this incredibly stressful situation very quickly allowed others to catch Julima on the following downhill section, where he would accept his fate with no energy to spare to catch them, and would effectively forfeit the win to the new Olympic champion of the 2004 marathon, Stefano Baldini from Italy, with Mev Keflezighi in second from the US, leaving Julima with the bronze. Information shortly surfaced that the man who attacked Julima was technically not a stranger, but rather an Irish priest who had infamously protested at a Grand Prix racing event the year before, where he ran into traffic preaching the second coming of Christ. Julima was understandably incredibly frustrated, but throughout his time would be awarded a slew of accolades for his efforts, and to this day goes down as one of the most iconic athletes in Brazilian athletics.
Na het voorbereidend werk van de hazen loopt hij de tegenstand op een hoopje. De laatste ronde is een martelgang, maar de 47.000 toeschouwers jagen hem naar het wereldrecord. De 21-jarige Shahin is bijna 2 seconden sneller. 7 minuten...
2004 overall was a pretty great year for track and field. There were some pretty weird things that happened on the throwing side of things, but other than that, it was pretty fantastic. The departure of many high-profile names in the sport left athletics in a peculiar spot for a few years, but once things got rolling, and the Olympic cycle came into fruition once again, plenty of storylines developed out of nowhere, setting the stage for what would hopefully be a riveting decade of athletic greatness. In one single year, world records of all sorts were being knocked down, new rivalries were beginning to form, and this would also mark the first year a successor to Haile Gebrselassie had genuinely started to shine and could very well be the next contender as the greatest distance runner of all time. I mean, the guy won 3 separate titles and set 3 world records at 22. I wonder how his career will go from here. There is a lot that happens in the following years, especially by the time the next Olympics roll around. But we're gonna have to save that for another time. Maybe we'll even go back a couple years to see what it was like back then, maybe a couple decades even. Who knows what's next? Until then though, I'll see you all in whatever video I upload next, and take care.